For some odd reason on social media, people love to make fun of NXT. And listen, if you're one of those people who watch the show every single week and you genuinely don't like it, maybe it's not for you. Look, all the power to you. Like, I totally understand. Maybe it's not your cup of tea. But the one thing that NXT has done very well since becoming NXT 2.0 and now it's NXT white and gold era, whatever you want to call it. One thing that they're doing really well with it is actually getting people invested in the stories and the characters, especially for some of the people that were on the roster that just simply couldn't get over. And that kind of leads me to this whole thing with Von Wagner, because Von Wagner, for the longest time, it seemed like he was going to be another wrestler in WWE that was going to get shoved down everybody's throat. And look, the guy obviously didn't have as much experience as many other people on the roster, and it was just kind of a slow start, right? And it kind of became this thing where people on social media were not as nice, right? In the last few months, WWE NXT has managed to actually get me to care about Von Wagner. And it's working very well. And it appears to be working because on tonight's episode of WWE NXT, they got me even more invested in Von Wagner. And you saw the thumbnail. You know what I'm talking about. This whole thing of you're going to get tabled. It is so dumb. It is so cringy. It's so silly. But for some reason, this created a very great moment for WWE NXT that has everybody talking. Now, Von Wagner going up against a new version of Bron Breakker. I say a new version because for the last several months, Bron Breakker has completely transformed the way I think about him. This guy, to me, doesn't even remind me one bit of the old Bron Breakker. The heel persona is working incredibly well for him, and Bron Breakker has been on an absolute, like, he's dominating as a heel. He gets this persona. He's working better in the ring because of it. His mic skills, his character skills, his appearance, his presence. So many great things could be said about Bron Breakker now that he is a heel. Naturally, it seems to be working. And Von Wagner put him through the table. And obviously this moment got a massive pop. And it really got me thinking about some of the strengths that NXT has. And I want to talk about that in today's video. Because yes, Bron Breakker did get tabled. And yes, Bron Breakker was victorious in this match. But a lot of people are actually talking about Von Wagner in the most positive light that I've ever seen before. And it actually comes down to something pretty simple. Von Wagner really started to click with people when they were doing backstage segments of Von Wagner talking to Robbie Stone and opening up to him about his childhood. The sense of realism that was included there, the sense of authenticity that was included in those segments. Week after week, it just kind of seemed like him being more personable and more relatable got people invested in him. And if you look at WWE NXT, it is a very character-driven show. And look, you can argue that maybe some of the acting and some of the segments are cringy. Maybe you can argue that it's a little too childish in certain ways, right? Very Disney Channel-esque. I can understand that argument. But when you look at what WWE NXT has done in the last 8 months or so, they've really found a way to not only just allow good wrestling on the show, because if you watch NXT and if you actually watch NXT, you're going to see good wrestling matches. But they're coming up with characters and storylines, and then they are including little tiny layers to each storyline and each character that throughout time continues to build that set persona, which is exactly what happened with Bron Breakker. These little moments, these little tidbits, as they continue to pile up, they are filling up the puzzle. And that's kind of what's happening with Von Wagner. And I like that a lot about NXT. I like the fact that Von Wagner can open up, be more real, be more authentic, be a little bit vulnerable. And I like the fact that people could connect with that. I like the fact that WWE NXT has these characters that people can connect with. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying every character is perfect, but it does seem like there is more focus on those characters. And even when something's not working, it seems like WWE is a little bit more committed to these characters. And then as they continue to build up every single week, it allows them to do a little bit more and a little bit more. And I feel like NXT is an experiment for a lot of these characters, right? Because if you're on NXT and a character doesn't work out, you can easily just say, screw it, take them off TV, write them off, have them come back under a new persona, try again. I feel like there is very little risk for WWE to do that with NXT wrestlers versus SmackDown and Raw. What I saw with Von Wagner tonight was people genuinely being happy about this moment. And again, this was with him losing. The reason why tonight's moment is so impactful is because for a while, we've been seeing those little tidbits fill up the piece to the puzzle, right? He filled up the puzzle. All those little missing pieces were starting to be added to the puzzle, and now you can see the clearer picture. And I'm not saying this is going to be, I'm not saying Von Wagner is going to be a future world champion. I'm not saying any of that because I don't like to predict these types of things this early on, especially in his career. But what I would say is it's showing that the NXT formula works. Look at Chase University. At first, the reception to it really wasn't that great, but as over time, you saw more and more people becoming fans of Chase University. The same thing could be said about Schism. When you look at the Dyad and Joe Gacy and Ava Rain, when it first started off, a lot of people were questioning it. A lot of people were saying, what is this? But as time goes on, you're seeing people get invested. And a lot of that really comes down to WWE not only being patient, but also WWE understanding in order to make things work, you can't force it down the throats right away. You can't just give them the final product right away. You got to build and build and build. Because initially, for a lot of these people in NXT, when they first arrived with these characters, there was not much to it. But as time went on, you're seeing things evolve. And I like that a lot about NXT. Because if WWE can do this and do it very well and consistently, if these characters are working, if these moments are getting good reactions, then you can build upon that for bigger storylines, bigger feuds, and you could even move them to the main roster. I don't know what Shawn Michaels is doing, but whatever he is doing with NXT, the individuals behind NXT have done something that I didn't expect them to do, and that's get me invested. Not to mention, you don't want to forget this part, but now they got something building with Drew Gulak and I look at Drew Gulak as a great wrestler, but now they got a little faction going on with him, and it looks like it's character and storyline driven. It's the little things, man. It's really good. I really like this. You're going to get tabled.